Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Paul Berry. Tonight, we are joined by Shane Ziegler and Jess Reid, the co-founders of Reston Forward. Reston Forward is an organization launched this January. It has a community-driven goal to bring together residents of all ages, backgrounds, and experiences. In just a few short weeks, Reston Forward has already held a documentary screening, events for early and mid-career professionals, and community service opportunities in partnership with Cornerstones. Shane and Jess, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Reston Forward has a unique origin story. Your founding mission is centered around advocacy. Jess, since we're in our final day of Women's History Month, I'd like to begin with you. Can you describe what Reston Forward is and how you became involved?
Sure. It was actually Shane came over to my apartment one day and told me about this amazing idea that he had to bring a already really existing group of people who love living in Reston together. We're blessed because we live in the same building. And as a result, we have a little community, a tight-knit community here. And we found ourselves often having conversations about how to be more effective in the community and how to participate in things and how to get involved and volunteer, and just not knowing what resource to go to or who to ask. And so when Shane came to me with this idea for Reston Forward, I thought, wow, it sounds great. It sounds like a great way to become more involved in my community and also get to go and be a part of things with people that I already care about and meet new people. And it's really been such a joy, even though it's only been a few months taking part in this. And yeah, I wish that we'd had a little bit more time to get things together before Women's History Month, because I had all these ideas that I talked to Shane about for things that Reston Forward wanted to do in March. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting to do some of those things next year, because we have all kinds of ideas and creatives and people who want to contribute and be a part of Reston for years to come.
Well, as Cheryl Terrio Simon, one of the guests at an event I'm going to ask you about later, would
Yes.
probably agree, every month is Women's History Month. So I hope that we can see some of those events sooner than next year.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. We don't have to wait until next March.
Exactly. Shane, so it sounds like you had a light bulb moment. Can you describe what the launch of Reston Forward was like and how you had that moment, and how has your background been a part of its creation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we already have a really strong foundational group of social friends here in Reston. And I would say all of us have pretty unique career backgrounds, and we're doing well professionally. And at some point in life, it seems like, well, what can we do that's not just work and what's not just social? So I'm involved in another nonprofit here locally. And when the pandemic happened, there was a lot of pullback on volunteerism and activities that we could do. Obviously, that makes sense at the time. But we already had this great foundation here. So I just started talking to a couple of friends about, well, how can we get more involved in Reston? Well, there's a lot of great groups that are already here, that already exist. And you can volunteer on one-off events, or you can try to get involved in leadership. But I thought, well, how unique could it be if we just started our new thing, our own thing? So I started going around to a couple of my friends in the building, and we started to gain momentum. We started to do some brainstorming, and we're like, well, let's just do this. Looking back, like Jess said, it wasn't super organized, and we've had a couple road bumps in trying to get things up and going, but we've had a lot of success already. So that's just a little bit of the background of how we got here today. And then, it started in the community that we live in, just in the apartment building, but it's quickly evolved to people all over Reston, not just along the corridor in the apartment complexes, but in the townhomes, in the town center, South Reston, North Reston, whatever pocket you want to talk about. We've started to gain momentum there and get more and more people who are coming to our events. And that's really what the goal was. So we're moving in the right direction.
Terrific. I want to focus a little bit on the leadership structure of Reston Forward. It sounds like it came out of an intense desire to give back in a collective way in the middle of the pandemic. What was it like forming an organization when you had limited access to in-person events and the ability to connect those folks face to face?
Yeah, it was a lot easier because we all lived in the same building. If we didn't all live in the same building, it would have been really difficult to kind of get that going. But the leadership structure just when we launched, it's changed a little bit since then as we're evolving. But it was just certain individuals with unique skill sets. So we needed one person who was good with social media and was able to create content for us and build out those platforms. We had another individual with a technology background who built our website. So we just kind of started picking and choosing people who were interested in getting more involved in Reston and had unique skill sets that could help us launch without spending a lot of money.
That's great. I want to focus in on the pandemic aspect. So being in the same building, quarantining all together, certainly that the shared hardship that that's now a near universal experience across not just the county, but the Commonwealth. What are the ways that Reston Forward is going to be giving back in the future in the new normal that we're all experiencing socially, professionally, the places that we live? What's the plan for the next step of evolution of Reston Forward?
Yeah, so kind of how we operate now is we have these monthly internal membership meetings, and everyone is always asking, well, what's next for you guys? It literally evolves each and every month. We all sit in a room together and we ask each other, what does everybody care about? What are you passionate about now? Is there a certain project that you want to tackle in the community? And then we brainstorm ideas, and then usually Jess and myself will take the big picture idea and we'll try to actually drive it to happen. So a good example is, as it's warming up, we talked about we want to all get outside together. We want to do something boots on the ground that's not in the apartment building like our last event was with Cornerstones. So we've talked about a beautification project. And we don't know exactly what that's going to be yet, but we're talking to different groups in Reston to try to figure out ways that we can get out and work with them. For example, we could do a community center refresh. We could do a community garden cleanup. So literally we sit together every month. We talk about, like last month we did talk, or this month we talked about Women's History Month and how we could get that included in what we were doing. And we just kind of dropped the ball there, but it's very evolutionary in that every single month we let our members kind of decide what we want to do. And then Jess and I essentially take that idea and we just try to make it happen to the best that we can.
Right.
Well, can I add to that? Do
Go
you
ahead.
mind? Sorry. Okay,
Please.
Cool. It's just also, we have these monthly meetings, like Shane said, and it's been very fluid because we want to allow ourselves time to meet other people in the community. We realize we're not the first organization to pop up in Reston, so we definitely thought it was important that we introduce ourselves and just let people know what we're about and be as transparent as we can be. So that has been another thing that we've been juggling along with planning events and trying to get out there. So for where we are in these first few months of getting things going, it's definitely a learning process, but it feels great. It feels like we're headed in the right direction.
I absolutely love the direct democracy model that you have. It sounds like everyone gets in the room, throws out the ideas, you brainstorm together, and then you execute. And nothing could be more straightforward than that. But certainly, as you said before, it can be a little messy at times.
Mm-hmm.
I was at the event that you partnered with Cornerstones. Jess, I'd love if you could talk a little bit about that. And that I think that was a bit of a messy affair, but I think in a very good way.
Right. Yeah, it ended up being great. We wanted to bag lunches to donate to, sorry, Shane,
the Embry Rucker Community Shelter.
Embry Rucker, thank you. To Embry Rucker. And so we decided we would just get together on the rooftop of one of our buildings, which, a side note, has been one of the ways that we have all come to be friends during the pandemic, because lots of places and things were closed. So we would go up to the rooftop of one of our buildings and, go outside and, socially distance and have a glass of wine if we could. But so we decided to have our first civic event at Reston and brought everyone together and learned how to remake sandwiches. I can tell some of us have never done that before. It was very fun and interesting, but it was also great because we got to socialize and continue to get to know each other better. And we had new members show up, and every event that we have is an opportunity to reach out to someone else who is new in Reston. So it did feel a little messy, and we had to do a little bit of repackaging certain things, but it was a great opportunity. So I'm glad we did that.
Terrific. Shane, I'd love to know a little bit more about the documentary screening that you did at the Reston Community Center.
Yeah, no, definitely. We were very proud of this event. So one of the main reasons we launched Reston Forward was to highlight organizations and resources and groups that are already here. And a lot of new people in Reston don't even know that we have a community center or ideas that we can, bring more awareness about how Reston came to be. She had a wonderful idea, and we teamed up with RCC to do a viewing of Another Way of Living, which is the documentary about Reston and a little bit of history about Bob Simon as well. What made it really unique, well, first of all, what was special to me about this is we were able to actually hold it at the Reston Community Center to try to bring more awareness around where it is and how to get there and what you can do there. So Lila was great, and they hosted us, and it was really special because none of our members really knew a whole lot about the history of Reston. And as both of you probably know, there's a really deep history here. It's a special place. It was a planned community. I mean, you can read for days about the history of Reston and how it came to be. So what was special about it is we were able to have a Q&A afterwards with Cheryl, Teresa Simon, and also Rebecca Wingert, the filmmaker. And we were able to actually have dialogue, get their perspective on things and where things are heading, and talk a little bit about some of the issues that are happening in Reston and get their thoughts on those. So we were really happy with it. We wish the turnout would have been larger, but it sounds like the Reston Community Center is going to be working to bring that film out into the community in the warmer months and share that with new members of Reston. So we're going to help them if they need our help to kind of be a catalyst to help find where can we do it, how can we engage the newer members in the new corridor apartment communities, if you will, so that they can also watch the film just like we were able to, and get a little bit of history of kind of how this place started.
Shane, I'd love to focus in on something that you just said. Reston was founded as a planned community. Reston now faces unplanned challenges that weren't foreseen in that period in the early 60s when Reston was first starting out. Challenges to density, the environment, affordability.
Right.
Where does Reston Forward fit into all of that?
I would say we fit in that these are all things that we are passionate about and we care about. And when we had our first brainstorming session with 30 or so individuals, we did talk about the challenges of affordability here. We didn't really talk about density per se, because we're not real estate experts or zoning attorneys or anything like that. But we do care about open space, public access to it for everybody. We do care about affordable housing. And I think while maybe individually we might not be able to make any changes in those areas, but I think where Reston Forward fits in is we just want everyone to be involved in the conversation. We want to educate people on how these changes are happening here right now. Obviously, the comprehensive plan is up for review, and there's a task force, and they have a lot of information that they've covered over the last few years. But we just want to make sure that information gets to everybody. We want to make sure that everybody knows what changes are being recommended. It's just education really around those things, and then just being able to be involved in the conversations if we're welcome. Maybe not now, maybe in the future, but we just want all of these new people coming to Reston, people who are coming to work here to stay here and live here as well, but we just want them to know what's going on. We just want to be involved in the conversation. have a seat at the table, and just have dialogue around the changes that are happening. So that's why we've kind of launched to try to be a hub of all of this information so that people can find it a little bit easier.
Great. Jess, I don't want to drive all the way past the events that you were teasing earlier. What can we maybe expect? Were the Women's History Month centered events focused around Women's History Month, around specific women of the community, or tell us more?
Yeah, in this process, I've learned a lot about how Reston is running, and I've noticed that there are some very intelligent, dynamic, I love that word, women in positions running organizations in Reston. Lila Gordon, for example. And I think that it'd be lovely if some of the younger women coming up in this community had the opportunity to interface with them. It'd be great to know that they even exist, right? I moved here and I'm new, and I didn't realize that there are all of these successful women running around Reston. And that's something that would be great to know for a high schooler, maybe who's trying to decide what field to go into, and maybe looking for a mentor or someone to be able to chat with. So hopefully some kind of event where we can all come together and just recognize the amazing people here, and also giving the younger folks, the younger generations, the opportunity to just see that this is tangible, this is real. If you're a woman who wants to start your own organization or whatever it is that you're looking to do, there are women right here in Reston doing those things.
Fantastic. It sounds like there's a very strong educational element or informational aspect to what you have planned.
Mm-hmm.
Is the motivation there because you're a young organization that is growing and you're trying to expand the network, or do you see yourself being the hub of the spoke of Reston moving forward, as the name implies? Shane?
Yeah, I would say that we want to be the hub and we want to be the spoke for that information. So, as you probably know about the podcast that we have launched, we've done one episode so far, but we want to highlight the leaders of these nonprofits that are here. We want to talk to small business owners. We want to do a resident spotlight and talk to individuals who've lived here, for their entire lives, and also new people that live here. And we want to have just one streamlined kind of process or area where you can go, right? When you move here, it's like, oh, what's Cornerstones? Oh, look, there's a podcast here where we can learn more about how to get involved with them. So I think we want to be that hub. A lot of it early on was us just trying to learn more about what we have, but now we want to highlight those individuals and those organizations. We want to drive engagement. We want to increase volunteerism at all those organizations. Some people can help with their time, some people can help with money, and a lot of these organizations, they do need to raise money for their projects and to give back to the community. So we want people to know that they exist. We want people to know how to get involved rather than trying to piecemeal things together, searching through the internet. We would love to be that hub and have a one-stop shop where people know what's going on in the community.
Jess, I want to focus a little bit more on the themes, the topics of the information. Where do you see some of those new themes being defined that will excite members of Reston and possibly even the wider area?
Wow, that's a good question. I think it's going to be something that we continue to develop as we move along. We have a lot of creatives in Reston Forward and who we have been meeting as we've been getting out into town. So I think the key will just be trying to organize it so that we can say, okay, if this is something that you're passionate about, how can we take that passion and make it useful to community members? So it's something that we talk about quite often. We haven't nailed down everything yet, but we have several members who are very excited about things that they want to do in their respective fields, for example. So hopefully those will be things that we can work with other organizations for, and not just we're not necessarily trying to reinvent the wheel, because we know that there are other organizations that exist here that are passionate about some of the things that we are as well. So if we can be an amplifier and help them make those things more prominent, then we'd love to do that.
Shane, something that Jess just said inspired the next question. The talent pool of Reston Forward, as you've described to me in the past,
Yeah.
is very diverse. It transcends generations, profession types, other aspects. Can you describe a little bit about what that means to the concept of Reston Forward and where that's going to take the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of Reston's primary principles was to be a diverse and inclusive community. And if you look around Reston, you look at our membership, it exemplifies like that already exists here. And it's really important. So our backgrounds are, I think when we started, we were 22 to 60 years old. I can say that we've had older individuals coming to our events since we've launched. We have retirees, we have makeup artists, we have government workers, we have business owners. It's truly a group that encompasses everything that Reston is. And I think it will show in our future events. It brings in way more creative ideas than just one group of the people who all look the same and sound the same. So I think the diversity of this group is what's really going to make it special. It's going to help us think outside the box and do things that maybe some other organizations haven't done. And hopefully we'll be able to tap into all of our culture and help bring new programming to Reston that's very individualized to some of our members' cultures. So I think there's some great things coming, and I think the diversity of this group is what's really going to make it special, hopefully for a long time.
Fantastic. So Reston Forward is in a very special place. I think we all agree that Reston is a unique place, not just as a planned community, but as the concept that brought people to this area. Inevitably, I think it's almost impossible to get away from the non-civic aspects that you've both been describing, and by that I mean the political aspects. And I bring that up only because I'm hoping that you can contrast your aims and the goals as they're evolving with that inevitability of partisanship and things that kind of exist outside of the ecosystem that Reston Forward lives in. How do you see yourself bringing a positive message or bringing positive attributes to the community with a lot of that noise in the background? Jess, if you'd like to answer first.
That's also something that we discuss quite a bit, because clearly there are very real and present issues in Reston that are often discussed, and it's not something that you can avoid, and we're not trying to, but we also want to continue to do positive things in the community and don't want any of the partisan things that are happening to be a reason why we stop and just focus on those specifically. So, and also our being new and our being so new in Reston really makes it important for us to listen more than we speak when it comes to certain issues. So Shane has done a really good job of reaching out to different people in the community for us to speak with. And when we do those things, it's really just us trying to learn more about Reston and about where those issues are coming from without necessarily inserting Reston Forward into the conversation as new as we are, So I think that we want people to be excited about being part of the community. And we, of course, want them to understand that their issues and their concerns are important, and we can be a conduit for them to be able to discuss those things with the right people and at least get information to them and try to give them as much as we can. But we also want this to be a fun place for people to exist and feel welcome coming to us with ideas that aren't related to specifically politics. So it's definitely an interesting space to be in, but I think that as we work hard to navigate this and figure out where we're supposed to be in it, we're going to make sure that we continue to host events and volunteer and do all the other things that Reston Forward thinks are important while we figure out where our place is in that world.
Shane, same question. It's a delicate, you stressed the educational aspect of Reston Forward earlier.
Yep.
bringing people together through shared information, shared progress, shared goals. How do you see Reston Forward doing that without kind of getting stuck in the mud of some of the outside things that are happening?
Yeah. So I think overall, for the most part, a lot of people really do want the same thing, right? And one example is affordable housing and affordability, right? There are just there's different groups that have different ideas and thoughts around how to get to that place, and we don't have the answers. We don't have the solutions. But we just want to be, like I said earlier, we want to be involved in those conversations as they happen. We're learning from all of these groups. We're learning from, people who have very strong opinions. And I think one thing that's going to set us apart is we are happy to meet with every single group and hear their stories and hear why they're passionate about what they're passionate about. We're not going to neglect any one group. Literally any group can come on to our podcast and tell us why they're passionate about what they're passionate about. So it's not about picking sides. It's not about, we like this group, we don't like this group. It's just making sure that it can be civil conversations about these hot topic things that are happening in Reston. We didn't know this getting into this, but it is a very political environment here, and people are super passionate. And advocacy has always kind of led the way and controlled the changes that happen here in Reston. And we've learned that very quickly. I think another thing is, from a political aspect, people don't even know like our true political structure of Reston and what it is, right? People are like, well, who's the mayor here? And it's like, well, that's not
Right.
how it works. We're actually part of Fairfax County, and we have a supervisor. So that's once again educational piece. So we hope at some point to sit with Walter's office or Walter and have him do an informational session or a Q&A for the new people in Reston, just so they know how the government works here. Like it's, some people don't even know, they just don't know what the process is here in Reston and what we are. So just continuing to be educational. At some point, I'm sure, our members have different opinions on everything. Some people might believe in one thing and some people might believe in another. So it's truly back to the diversity of the group. It's a lot of different backgrounds, and they just want to be here. They want to be involved. They want to know how things work, and it's really important.
Thank you for that. Well, we're going to take a quick break. After we come back, we'll be discussing that diversity, the podcast, and where it's going to be going. The balancing act that Reston Forward is currently walking that tightrope on. And, of course, the future of Reston itself with Shane Ziegler and Jess Reid.
You ready for the surprise?
Resuming moments like these starts with protecting our kids against COVID-19 and dangerous new variants.
Oh, you miss him.
Get the latest facts by visiting getvaccineanswers.org and speaking to your pediatrician or healthcare provider.
I'm a first-generation Filipino American.
You don't always feel you're a part of the country you live in. It's this weird middle space sometimes that you have to live inside of. But when you meet others that are also living in that space, you'll learn to know that it's its own unique space too.
Do you love sports? Then you should know about STEM. Because maximizing nutrition, analyzing peak muscle performance, calculating the perfect shot, and more are all made possible by science, technology, engineering, and math. In fact, there are more careers than ever in sports science. So if you have a passion for sports, then think about getting involved in STEM and improve everyone's game on and off the field. Get inspired at shecanstem.com.
Freedom. It's at the core of who we are. The freedom to live without fear, to jog where we please, to wear a hoodie. The freedom to breathe. Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
My name is Teresa Barber. I was in the United States Navy, and I served overseas in the Middle East and Africa. Early on in my career, I had a commander that taught our suicide prevention training on a Friday afternoon, and the very next day he took his own life. 90% of suicide attempts involving a gun are fatal. You don't know how much somebody can hide what's going on inside their head. Store your guns securely. Help stop suicide.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Paul Berry. Tonight, we're talking with Jess, Reid, and Shane Ziegler, the co-founders of Reston Forward. Thank you, Shane and Jess, for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
We're picking back up here on this segment with a discussion about the future, not just of Reston Forward, but Reston itself and its place in the wider community. Jess, I'd like to start with you. Can you describe a little bit about your personal involvement in the community and what it means to be a member of this part of the county and how that translates into your work with Reston Forward?
Sure. This is definitely the first place I've ever lived where I feel empowered to speak about anything, genuinely. I've lived in various places across the country because of my work. And once I got to Reston, I thought, okay, well, this will just be another place where I live for a little while and we'll see how it goes. But the longer I've been here, the more I've fallen in love with it, as most Reston residents have, and realized that it's okay to get involved. And I think that as I continue to stay here and want to be here, like many of us, it's only natural to want to be a part of the conversation and speak about things that are important to you. And for me, one of those is affordable housing. I mean, I'm blessed to be able to live where I live and afford to do so, but at some point I'm going to want to purchase a home and live here and have family here. And my involvement in Reston Forward, I think, is going to really help shape how I go about that, because one of the things that we have done well so far is creating a platform for people to just speak to each other about the issues that they have or about their concerns for the future, or about things that they would like to see happen in Reston. So I think that being in Reston Forward and just the creation of this organization hopefully will leave people going, okay, great, at least we got together. We don't always have to agree, but the fact that we sat down and discussed and heard each other out and approached conversations with empathy will be how we make positive contributions to this community.
Shane, a similar question. How do you see your personal investment in your passions and the way that your experiences that brought you here to Reston translating into Reston Forward's activities and how it impacts the community?
Yeah, great. So first of all, I think it's important to remind myself, why did I move to Reston? Right. So I lived in various communities really across the United States, from Philadelphia to New York City to Virginia Beach. I've kind of been all over the place. And I moved to Northern Virginia, and I had settled down in Loudoun County, actually, in the Aldie area. And it was just very difficult to get to work because I was working in Washington, D.C. So after a few years of going through that, I decided I need to find a place that can be more permanent for me. And why Reston? And, I found this little pocket. Obviously, I already knew that it existed here. But as I started to visit other areas like Tyson's Corner and Chantilly and the city of Fairfax, Reston really stuck out to me. And one, it's very easy to get anywhere from here, right? We have a great highway that runs right through. It comes right through the hub of where we live. The economy here, right? The companies that are here, the type of people that are moving here, the jobs that are here, right? And then jump over to another really important aspect of Reston, and that is nature and its beauty and the naturalness of it, right? It's a biolithic city. So I think I like deep down inside me that I knew that this was going to be the place for me. This was going to be, you know, what I tell people hopefully is my forever home, or at least my home base. So I think one, just already knowing that I wanted to be here was kind of a big factor in Reston Forward, right? Like, why would we start a group if Reston wasn't that important to us? So basically, you know, it's really hard to say that there's just so many there's so many positive things going for Reston already, but there's also a lot of challenges, some of that we've already discussed today. But Reston is already a great place. It's an amazing community. It has great resources. It has great amenities. It has transportation. It has jobs. It has a lot of things for young families to do as we start to think about starting our families. It's an amazing place. But how can we take our energy and just continue to make sure it's an amazing place? It can continue to get better. And if all of the new people and the people who've lived here for a long time can work together, I think that Reston can literally be the best place to live in the region, the United States. It's crazy. It has all of the pieces and the foundation and the bones to just continue to flourish. And I think this group hopefully can be a big part of that. And I think other people will feel those same passions about why they want to move to Reston. And I think if they have an outlet once they get here to be creative and to continue to move Reston into the future, I think that would mean the Reston Forward has been a success.
I want to connect something that, Shane, you mentioned earlier about the Reston Comprehensive Plan. There's been, during our conversation here, we've been discussing affordable housing and the next generation of Reston that's slowly, or not so slowly, moving into the area. How does Reston Forward, if there is a view at all, view development and opening the Reston Comprehensive Plan to increase the housing supply so that the housing affordability it really is a crisis. It's a nationwide crisis, not just in Fairfax County.
Yeah.
Does Reston Forward have any plans or ideas or positions perhaps on the comprehensive plan and development?
Are we starting with me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
I would say, one, when we started this group, we didn't know what the comprehensive plan was. We didn't know what the process was. We didn't know how to be involved because we didn't even know that it existed. So as we've met with community leaders, we've learned about it, and we're trying to take that information and what it is and educate our membership. I wouldn't say that as a group we have a viewpoint on opening the comprehensive plan or, you know, things that we want in there, because we're not even close to that point in kind of the way that we've been moving as an organization. However, I think now that we know what it is and how important it is, we do want to have our membership involved in this in the future. I would say, you know, personally, I think pro-growth is good for Reston. It's a growing community. There's no denying that. And you can read a lot of the articles that are out there and kind of what the population trends are going to look like in Reston in the next 20 years. And it could easily double in size from a population standpoint. There needs to be more housing here. It's important. And this is just my personal opinion. And looking at trying to wrap our heads around the comprehensive plan, Jess and I, and trying to understand what it is and how it works and what density is, it just shows the intense need for more housing. And I think they got it right on the last time around with the transit station areas and increasing that density, because you have to go up if you want to provide more housing units for all the people that are moving here. And also by doing that around the transit areas, you are increasing the walkability and the usability of kind of that corridor area. So as a group, no, we haven't, I think we need to get a copy of the comprehensive plan changes to our group. And it sounds like later this summer, there's going to be some more community conversations around that. And I think that Reston Forward would love to be just there to hear what's happening, to hear the changes that are being made, maybe even host one of the sessions with the task force and have Reston Forward host that so more people can hear about what's going on. But it just goes back to people don't even know that this is happening. New people certainly don't know this is happening. So as a group, obviously they don't know enough about it yet. We haven't educated them enough yet, but Jess and I, who are doing the day-to-day and leading the charge, we obviously are hearing more about this and getting brought into these conversations and kind of have our own opinions on it. But Reston is growing. We want Reston to keep growing. Why would we want this to stop growing? And they're going to have to address affordability in some way at some point. And more housing units are going to need to be here to accommodate the growth, the job growth that's happening here. And obviously the metro coming here.
Quick follow-up question. I agree that housing affordability absolutely has to be addressed. Shane, who is going to be doing that addressing? Should it be a local solution, state, federal, some combination of that?
It's a combination of all of those. I think that obviously there's housing tax credits for developers, from what I understand, to kind of chip in and be a part of the solution. Obviously, Fairfax County is talking about this as early as last week. I believe I read an article that Fairfax County increased their affordable housing goal to 10,000 units by 2034. That might not be exactly correct. I know Walter chimed in and he would like to have 1,000 additional units by 2027. And I think that's achievable. So I think that local government, county government, state government, federal government, wherever you can find resources and smart people to address an issue like this, the better. This is not just a problem here. This is a problem everywhere in the country, right? But we have to start now. And part of that is going to have to be working with private sector. You're going to have to work with the developers to build more housing and guarantee more affordable units and workforce units. A lot of our members would fall into that WDU program. They're out here working, a lot of hourly jobs, a lot of service jobs, and it is expensive to live here. A lot of, our membership's not just people that live in Reston, it's people that work in Reston. And a lot of those people can't live here, even though that they want to live here. So I wouldn't say we have a solution, but I think by bringing together a lot of creative minds that this group has and working with all of the governmental agencies and developers, if they actually work together, positive change can be made around affordable and workforce housing in Reston.
Fantastic. Jess, it sounds like you've been hitting the books also for the rest of comprehensive plan. Where do you see the greatest need in terms of within the community? And by this, I mean, Reston and the surrounding area is very diverse demographically, socioeconomically. The median home price is $503,000. The average home price is $505,000 in Reston. Is affordability limited to one part of the community, or is this something that everyone should be concerned with?
It's something that I hope everyone is concerned with. Shane addressed the fact that we have some members who are hourly and then we have some who aren't, but the struggle is the same for all of us as people who live in the apartment building that we're in, for example. You want to buy a home someday, right? But just because you can afford to live in a luxury apartment building does not mean that you can afford a $500,000 home. It just doesn't always end up being, So I genuinely hope that everyone is concerned. I know that as someone who wants to continue living in Reston, that is an issue that is very important. It just is. And if there are people out there who don't think that affordable housing is an issue for Reston, I don't know. I think that's why the conversations are so important. Just talking to different people, learning what their struggles are, hearing their frustrations. That's how we have started to learn more about why it's such an issue in Reston. And like Shane touched on the comprehensive plan, the more we learn about Reston, the more we learn about the issues that exist here. It's definitely been just a fire hose of information, and we're trying to process all of that and make sure that we can put it in a digestible form for our members so that everyone understands what the pertinent issues are here. But yeah, I genuinely hope that people understand that affordable housing is a very present issue for more than just your hourly employee or, someone fresh out of high school or college looking to stay in Reston. It's an issue for those of us who are a little bit older and new to Reston too, because we're trying to, again, navigate living here and figure out what that means and where we can go, where else we can go, where we can buy. I would love to buy a home and not have to buy a home outside of Reston. And that should be tangible. That should be something that I can accomplish.
One of the fantastic ways to get that message across is certainly in the new podcast medium that you launched just a few weeks ago. Shane, you mentioned this earlier, speaking with Layla Gordon of the Reston Community Center. What's on deck for the podcast?
Great question. We have a lineup of guests that we hope to reveal in the near future. And like I said before, we want it to be just conversational. We want it to be informational. We want everybody in Reston who wants to be on this thing, we want them to be on there if they want to be on there, right? And while we don't have a perfect structure, like I said before, we want to have one aspect of it that is civic education. So all the civic groups here have an opportunity to come on, have an opportunity to talk about their organizations and how to drive more engagement, which, the podcast is one avenue. It's for them to tell their story and to educate people. And then Reston Forward as a group has the responsibility to make sure that follows through and encourage our people to get involved. We've been doing this kind of ties in. We've been doing these connecting events, networking events. I just think it's more of a way for people to connect, not network per se, but we hold those at locally owned businesses in the area. So being able to highlight some of the local business owners as well is a function that we want to use the podcast for. And then the last piece, like I mentioned earlier, is just a resident spotlight. There is such a wealth of knowledge here in Reston, and Jess used the word dynamic earlier. There's some of the most dynamic people in the world live in Reston. They've come from all over the world, and they've chosen to call this home, and they all have unique stories. So I think being able to get individuals on the show too, just as a fellow Restonian, is going to be really important.
100%. Every time we host an event, and not even just hosting events, when we're out just talking to people, they're excited about the future of Reston. And there are so many creatives that live in this area. I think it's so important that we highlight them and give them a platform to speak. And it gives you the opportunity to maybe find out that there's something that you're interested in that someone else wants to do. We had a very nice lady who came to our last networking event. And on her way out, I said, thank you for coming. We appreciate you. I hope you had a good time. And she said, I'm so glad I came. I just met someone who's going to make doing my job much easier. And that right there kind of gave me chills, because I thought that's what it's all about. We just put them together and it worked. And now they're going to go off and do great things. And so hopefully our podcast can also serve us in that way. So people will be able to listen and hear about things that are going on around here and resources and again, possible mentors or whatever you're looking for, just highlighting those things, spotlighting them.
As the name Reston Forward implies, you are looking to the future. Shane, what are some of the great things that you'll be able to rattle off on a list in 10 years that Reston Forward accomplishes?
That's a great question.
Awesome question.
I would say I would start it off by saying that in 10 years, I probably shouldn't be the person to be running Reston Forward anymore, right? It is an evolutionary group. So as new people come and they have new ideas, like this is their platform. And, hopefully for 10, 20, 30 years, this group, it's not me and Jess at the leadership level forever, because that's not the point of it. Hopefully it just continues to evolve and new people take it over and great new ideas come into the community. And I think that is really the success. As long as this engine keeps going and it keeps running and people have passionate ideas and they can actually deliver results in Reston about the things that they care about, I think that would be the success of this. I can't sit here. There's things that we care about and things that are important to us, right? Like we talked about affordability. we're not going to be the main group that's going to make that happen. But we want to. So, we could sit here and say, let's increase affordable housing units by, 20% over the next 10 years in Reston. That would be a great accomplishment. But as long as our members are continuously able to come to us with ideas, like Jess's ideas about Women's History Month, and highlighting powerful women in our community and giving them an opportunity to talk to the young women here about empowerment, or it's another member of ours who's a software engineer or coder or something. He's passionate about tech education for people in our community. So we were thinking about holding some type of not career fair, but career path panel where people can talk about, this is what a systems engineer does, this is what a software engineer does, and just talk about all of the different tech jobs and encourage people to go into that field. So as long as our members continue to have great ideas and we can deliver and follow through on them, getting into the community and sharing their message or accomplishing something, I think that's the ultimate goal. So it's not, here's one issue, let's fix it. It's, if people keep coming to the table and have more issues that they want to talk about and discuss, and as long as we continue to address them and we're successful at it, I think that makes Reston Forward a success.
It's always difficult to take a blank canvas and create something from nothing. Jess, same question. In 10 years, what is Reston Forward going to be? What will it have accomplished?
I 100% agree with Shane on this one. In 10 years, I hope that the next group of young professionals in Reston are running this, that they're at the helm, that they are still very much interacting with community leaders. And of course, we hope to still be here as well and be a part of that. But I think it's so important that we realize that the things that we hold dear and that are important to us right now may very well be important to the younger generation that's coming up behind us, but there will also be other things going on that they are more passionate about, more educated about. So for us, just having those, keeping the lines of communication open. 10 years from now, I know that Reston will look different. The footprint will be a little different. There will be more people living here, but as long as it is still a very diverse community where people feel comfortable coming together to discuss important issues, we will feel like Reston Forward has been a success. It goes back to what we were saying before about identifying who you need to talk to about what. Sometimes it's not Reston Forward's job to maybe make a statement about something. It might just be better for us to put people together who have more education on certain issues and want to discuss those things. It's not always going to be us in it. It might be us just facilitating something. So I'm excited about what Reston Forward is going to look like in 10 years. Shane and I were joking yesterday about like a hashtag Reston 2030, we want people to understand that we care about the current issues in Reston, but we also really care about what this is going to look like a decade from now. So it's important that we approach the things that we're being involved in with that in mind.
We're nearing the end of our show, so I want to give you the opportunity to highlight any important aspects or any ways that it's possible to get involved in the future. The Reston Forward website has been scrolling underneath our participants here. You can go and visit them at www.facebook.com/Reston Forward, and on Instagram, www.instagram.com/Reston Forward. There is the famous podcast, and I'm very excited to see what the big reveal will be in a few, hopefully days. Don't keep us waiting weeks, Shane. Jess, I'm eager. I think we need to have a women's focused event tomorrow. Let's not wait. We can put it together. The last aspect I want to cover before we end is on the way that you're communicating. We've discussed a lot about the evolution of Reston Forward and how you've been taking really nothing and building this organization from scratch. Again, it's hard to get an audience to focus these days in the tablet, iPad iPhone digital world, the educational medium that you're going to be existing in will be competitive. How do you see yourself leveraging the internal resources, that inner strength that you've been describing of your members, to move forward the goals of the organization? Shane?
Yeah. I think, obviously our communication channels are what they are. Everyone really has access to the same communication channels. We have our website, we have our social media. I think the podcast sets us apart a little bit more. Additionally, I think we're going to be visible, and we're going to be visible by, once again, bringing education about all of the great things that are here. We're going to be out in the field. We're going to be teaming up with arts organizations and hopefully doing volunteerism with them, highlighting the great spaces that they have and the great artists in the community. We're going to literally be out there. We're going to be wearing our Reston Forward shirts. That's going to make us stick out. The shirts just came in. They're awesome. They're going to be great. But our membership, we want to encourage our membership to be in some way or form, whether it's one person or 10 people, we want them to be at every community conversation that's going on. And I think that'll set us apart. They're doing the feasibility study for a potential visual and performing arts center in Reston. We have representation there. People, where we want to be at every conversation that's happening. We want to be at every event. Founders Day is coming up. It's another one on April 9th. We're going to be there. And I think by us just being there and people meeting us and getting to know who we are and what we're trying to do, in addition with the podcast, is going to set us apart and make sure that we continue to grow.
Jess, same question. How are we going to reach out amidst all the difficult competition?
Yeah, it's a wild space because things are constantly changing. I mean, we get more engagement on certain platforms than others. So it'll be very important that we are aware of how things are changing in the social media world, because that's what, like you said, everyone is on these days. So, but also as important is going to be our being out there and being seen. And that's why we're happy we got shirts, because now people will go, that's an interesting, diverse looking gaggle, but now they'll know we're Reston Forward just by looking at us. So hopefully we just keep our ear to the ground and stay aware of how people are easily digesting their information.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Shane and Jess, for being on the show tonight. Best of luck for your upcoming events. Reston Founders Day is on April 9th. And we will, if I'm able to be there, I will look out for the t-shirts. Maybe you'll have a t-shirt cannon so I can grab one myself.
Writing that down.
I'd like to remind everybody that past episodes of Inside Scoop can be found on the Inside Scoop YouTube channel. We air every Monday night at 8 p.m. on Channel 10, Fairfax Public Access. I'm your host, Paul Berry. Thank you for watching.